There we go. I think we are officially live. Welcome to everybody to the, what is it, our third or fourth Backdrop CMS virtual user group. Our agenda today is to talk about creating themes and front-end development for Backdrop. We don't have a formal presentation plan. This is more of a discussion group, a peer-to-peer sharing and Q&A. I think we have a few Backdrop some experience in the room today to answer questions and talk a little bit about contrib themes in Backdrop. Let's say a little time at the end just for open. If anybody has any questions on anything, feel free to bring them, talk about them at the end. I think we should start by just kind of going around the room and talking about how people, what their experience is with theming in Drupal, or in Backdrop, excuse me. Have you created themes before? How do you do it, and what your experience has been between the difference between Drupal 7 and Backdrop? I can start and say that I've done a few theme projects in Backdrop. I think, as I've frequently said, one of the biggest sort of mental mind shifts for me between Drupal 7 and Backdrop was the separation of the layouts from the theme. For those who haven't done this, that might be listening along, in Backdrop, we kind of take the templates and the layouts out of the theme, and the theme is mostly CSS. Although I'm hearing that people handle this in different ways. Mentally, that was something that it's not that it's hard. It's just that it's so different from Drupal that it takes a little bit of getting used to. But I think I like it a lot once I've gotten used to it. I have one of the things I noticed right away, and that continues to concern me just a little bit in terms of the growth of Backdrop, is the availability of contrib themes. And we might talk more about that today. So I have recently applied to become the maintainer of an abandoned Backdrop theme and hope to work on that a little bit. My goal is to create kind of a good starter theme that works for me and other people. It's the Teamwork 15 theme. If anybody wants to look it up and jump in the issue queue, please feel free to add comments there. I'd like to have color modules. This theme had color module support, but it's broken because it's very old. So I'd like to update the color module support and potentially do a pretty dramatic overhaul of this theme because it's kind of out of date. And also, I hope to work with the rest of the team to kind of encourage and support more contrib themes in Backdrop in the future. So,
Tim, is that a ported module? Theme or a new one?
It was ported. I forget who ported it. I think Graham ported it. Is that right? But he was, it's been like looking for a maintainer for a long time, and it's been out of date. It basically doesn't work right now. So, and it was like, I don't know, I could have started and just created a completely new theme, but this one seemed to be so broken and out of date that it would be better to sort of resurrect it and do something with it. I'm also looking to add one of the things that I don't think exists. I don't know if there's any themes right now that provide like SAS support out of the box, any contrib themes. And this one had SAS support, I believe. And although it uses Grunt and I want to use Gulp, but anyway, so that's sort of what I'm looking to build with, to work on that when I get time, but it's not going to happen in the next few weeks. So anybody else want to talk about what their experience with theming and Backdrop has been? Jen, do you want to go next?
Sure. So in general, I am pretty familiar with Drupal theming. So for me, it's been, I'm also pretty familiar with the differences between Drupal and Backdrop. So for me, I think theming and Backdrop has sort of been a breeze, like probably easier than it is for most other people because I already know all of the oddities about it. I think the thing that has been not necessarily the hardest, but the thing that requires the most thinking for me is definitely if I have a Drupal 6 or Drupal 7 site and I'm trying to do the upgrade, trying to figure out like how to create the first Backdrop layout that is an exact match to the Drupal layout, so that when I run the upgrade, all of the blocks end up in the right places. And then after that, it's pretty easy for me to create multiple other layouts to handle, different, this type of page or this type of taxonomy term or whatever. And my favorite part these days of dealing with that is just copying the stuff that's in core and fiddling with classes from Bootstrap. And I think that that's a huge win in terms of just making it easy for me personally to just copy stuff and get it done really quick. And I hope that other people are feeling that same advantage of having that Bootstrap stuff right there to work with.
I think that the upgrade from D6 or D7 is very interesting. We should sort of like dedicate maybe a portion of this meeting at the end discussing that process a little bit more, because I'm interested in that.
Okay.
But yeah.
Jen, you raised the issue of upgrading. Yeah. And is that what you just said, Gregory? I drifted for a second. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm more interested in how themes and regions and blocks, when people do the upgrade map, and what would be the process. Because in my head, if the theme that they were creating was not ported, or if it's one would sort of like have to switch back to, I guess, a default D6 or D7 theme, like a Bartik or something like that. Do the functionality upgrade, so to say, and then try to match it. But Jen has more experience, and she's shaking her head now.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's why I would like to talk more about it. Maybe we can dedicate sort of like some half of it, say, of this meeting to that, and the rest of it would be sort of like generally as well about creating new themes or porting new themes just for the community.
Right. Well, look.
First, Jen, I have a question. You were talking about Bootstrap classes.
Yes.
Were you talking about the classes that are a core on the layout system?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So I will usually copy like a core layout, something like Moscone flipped, but I might need the columns to be different widths. And so I can just change the classes on the columns to have them, either add different breakpoints or be different widths on the desktop. And I find that a really convenient way to make a layout that doesn't originally match my design into a layout that matches my design without having to do any coding, really. I mean, you just open a file and change a class, and then you're done. And the speed of which I can get that thing done is so different compared to like Drupal, where you're like, okay, well, I'm going to take this panels layout, and then I have to like copy in and make a plugin, and then you either have to fuss with the CSS a lot to try and make all the widths work the way you want, or you try and switch to a different grid system. And just having that already be there is great. I mean, even when I used Radix in panels, it still felt like it took a while because there was a bunch of stuff in Radix that I didn't want, like a bunch of extra divs and stuff. I'm always trying to like remove the panels inner divs and stuff. And in Backdrop, I just find it so easy to be like, oh, we need a new layout, no problem. Just like copy this one, rename it, ta-da. Mm-hmm. Or even just taking an existing layout and just putting a template file in my theme and being like, in my theme, the Moscone flipped layout is going to have a narrower column. And then that's just it. I don't have to do anything else. So.
And by the way, is there a documentation outside of the layouts itself about the classes which are available? For example, also helper classes like I know of Element Invisible, for example, but are they documented somewhere?
Yeah, we should. So I'm going to try and make a list here, Tim, of all of the things that come up in this meeting that we need to work on. But yeah, I think documenting all of the helper classes in core would be really helpful for anyone who's writing a theme. Because that's another thing that like, oh, I know I can just add an element invisible to whatever and it'll work. But you'd have to be pretty familiar with the system to even know that's an option. If we had some place where it's like, here's a bunch of utility classes that are provided by core, will work in any theme, any module, any whatever, and then have another set that's like, if you're using the core layouts Bootstrap system, here are the Bootstrap classes that are available. We are using a version of Bootstrap 4, but it's not the latest, and it has like modifications. And so I've also noticed some issues with people who come into it knowing Bootstrap being like, why doesn't this work the way I think it does? And I think if we had what was documented, what was in there, we would probably get like pull requests for people trying to add things that aren't. But without that documentation, people get really confused about why something isn't working. Like, am I doing it wrong? You're like, no, it's us that's wrong. But yeah, so documenting help requests, I'm going to put that in a list of something we need to do.
Then have we deviated from the Bootstrap to the point where we cannot follow, like, because I know that upgrades get fix problems and also add new features. So are we missing out?
I don't think we've deviated very much. I think what we might want to do is just update to the latest version and see if it affects us at all. It might not. I think the only thing, I don't even remember. There's something really small that we changed that I think made it less verbose somehow. I don't remember what Wes did, but there was something that seemed like there was a pull request against Bootstrap, and we're like, well, we'll just use that now. But I don't think that what got into Bootstrap is what we got in. So just updating to whatever they did, I think would be.
So there's one thing to be added to your list. Just document the differences between the vanilla Bootstrap and what we have sort of like changed. And also, I don't know if we clearly indicate the version of Bootstrap being used anywhere, like the status page. That's a good idea.
Okay.
Jeffrey asked a question, but I'd like to go through and ask, or have people introduce themselves some more and just talk about what other people are doing with themes. Olaf, have you made many themes for Backdrop yet?
I made about 3 or 4, I think, or 5. And yeah, I'm using bases and making a sub-themes of bases, and that works quite well. It's not so well documented, but there's one paper.dropbox URL from Vesrov where he explains how it works, and there are 2 approaches. And yeah, I was quite astonished because it's really easy, in my opinion, to build a very different design in bases with a sub-theme with not so many CSS. And usually I don't write many templates, 2 or 3 per site, maybe. And yeah, so I think it's maybe not the most technology-wise effective way, because I guess there's a lot of unused CSS in my theme then, but the sites are, however, fast enough, so that's not the problem. And I'd recommend to do that. And unfortunately, I'm on my tablet in the Hangout, so I can't share my screen so well. But I could try to post in Gitter 2 or 3 URLs of the websites, where you can see that they don't look like bases. So they're very different with the minimal approach. So I'm very fine with it, but I'm also interested, yeah, to build my own starter theme, which is even more simple.
I'm sure that Wes will be happy, because that was the intention of bases, to make it easier for people to theme. So goal achieved, I guess. Did you mention that you have a link to some URLs that are not in the official site that explain, is it Wes's sort of like product that explain how that works?
Yeah, wait a minute.
Maybe we should add those to the official documentation then, if you can post those links somewhere so we can grab them.
I do it in Gitter now. Wait a minute.
Okay.
Carry on.
Peter or Jeff, do either you want to say anything? Introduce yourself. Jeff, are you doing any theming, or?
I created a sub-theme of Basis, and way back when, I think I did a sub-theme of Bartik, and then I did a headless site, which the theme was taken over by Nux.js. And in all of those cases, I didn't have any need for custom TPL or layout files. I just used core layouts, and the theme was CSS, and most of my effort was getting Sass into things. But that wasn't that much effort at all.
Sure.
That's my experience.
Okay. I don't know if Peter wants to say anything or not. Do you, so Jeff asked a question about copying. When you, in the chat there, when you copy a core layout, are you copying it to a custom layout on your site? Like layouts, custom, my layout template, TPL?
So was that a question for Jen?
Yes.
Oh, sure, or anybody, I suppose. But Jen?
What was the question?
It's in the chat for the Hangout. Can you see it? Oh, I think we lost you.
Oh,
You're back.
Are you back?
You're back.
everybody got frozen. I was like, uh-oh, that means it's me. What was the question again?
So it's in the chat.
It's in the chat in the Hangout.
It says, when you copy a core layout, are you copying it to a custom layout on your site, like layouts, custom, my layout, TPL?
It depends. So if I need to add a new region, then I create a new layout. But if I just need my columns to be different widths, then I will copy the core layout into my custom theme.
And we should specify that it's layout templates, not layouts that are being copied.
Right. So I'm copying the template file from my layout template from the core layout template to my themes templates folder if the regions do not change. When the regions do change, then I copy the entire layout template, including the info file and anything else, to a custom layout template and rename it.
Since you're bringing up regions, I needed to ask, see how it came up recently in the queue and the Gitter that when the regions do not match one-to-one, like the names, then blocks disappear.
Yeah.
When you switch, does that happen to you when you do the upgrades? Do you need to be careful of choosing a layout that has specifically the layout? Yeah.
Yeah.
So how's the process?
That's why creating that first layout when you're upgrading from Drupal to Backdrop requires so much thinking, or at least for me, is because I'm like, okay, well, this is going to be the first one I'm going to create. And so all of the region names need to exactly match all of the region names as they were in Drupal. The machine names, the human names can change. And so I create the first one that's like sort of an exact copy of my page template from Drupal. But then once it's in, even if I want a layout that's identical to the Moscone layout, I might still create a custom layout instead that has matching machine names. So that way, when I switch between layouts on my Backdrop site, all of the blocks will end up in the right places. So if it was called like first sidebar and second sidebar versus left and right, I want to make sure I maintain those machine names so that changing layouts later isn't going to accidentally lose my blocks. And I think that once we fix, I think there's a core solution that will make your blocks not disappear when you do that. I think once that comes in, once we figure out that, this will become a much easier process. But right now, because I know that we have that core problem and I hate losing blocks, I'll either make sure all the region names match, or I make sure that, and this is a crazy hack, that all of my layouts have some regions that have the same name. So like every layout will have a header, a footer, a top, and a bottom. And then when I go to change stuff, I'll just move all the blocks into top or bottom. I'll change the layout and then I move them back. That way they don't get lost, which is a little messy, but it's a good workaround.
It was one of sort of the proposed solutions for that problem in the issue, as in if we find no matching region, we just dump everything to a random region, like top
or the
bottom.
default region. Because every layout has to have a default region. Yeah,
and then people at least can drag them around, which would be less work rather than have the blocks disappear.
Yeah, because sometimes you forget what configurations were on those blocks. And it's really frustrating.
So are you saying, when you say the first one, the first layout that you do, is it sort of like you try to distinct the regions, the different layouts in a site, and then grab the one that is mostly used, like the home page or the main page, and then you do that. So you get that out of the way, and then you sort of like return to do the what you would call the special ones.
Yeah. So I try and make whatever layout was being used in the page.tpl, the PHP file in the Drupal theme, match the default layout in Backdrop. And then there's sometimes a lot of overrides in a Drupal theme where you might have like page node 21 or whatever. That I'm just going to custom build in Backdrop afterwards, either as like a individual layout or as a node type override or whatever it is. But during the upgrade process, I just want the one that's exactly the same to be there, because when Backdrop does the upgrade, it's only going to match one layout. It's only going to match your theme regions. And so if you have all, because in Drupal, all of your regions are in your theme, regardless of how many templates you have and what their names are in different ones. I just want one in Backdrop that matches that list of region names that were in the theme file. And then I do the upgrade, and then after that, I'll add all the other ones.
I still want to focus this meeting on theming, but since the discussion of moving from Drupal to Backdrop is in play, I would like to sort of like focus on the upgrade as well. And I was wondering, leaving the other tasks on the side, when it comes to the theme, sort of like what's the order that you start thinking or acting on actually doing the port? So do you actually make sure that all the modules are ported, or you make sure that you have the equivalent ones for Backdrop, then you do the layouts, and then you do the theme, and in the meantime, until you actually port the theme, do you switch to like the default basis, or how does that work?
Yeah, so I always do my updates more than once. I never do it just once. And so usually the first thing I do, my first update is the slowest. I'll like only update core, and I'll make sure nothing explodes, and then I like go back and I add like one module, and then the next one, and the next one, and the next one. I go through until I've got all of the modules in place and all of them updated. And as long as nothing exploded, then I turn everything off, I throw the database away, and then I do them all at once to make sure that all the updates run in the right order. Okay. So now I have my like, and I do that in like Bartik or something. I don't care what it looks like. I just want to make sure the site doesn't explode. And then once I have all of the updates run, I'm like, okay, that's good. I build a new theme, like kind of either from scratch or by like copying the stuff from the Drupal 7 thing into place, and I make sure it looks right. But that's like a separate from the upgrade. So I have a finished theme before I do the upgrade. Then I throw away the old upgrade, and I put the Drupal 7 database in like its normal state with the theme enabled. And then I do the upgrade into the themed version. And so I do all of the modules one by one, and then do them all together, and then I build a theme. And then I do the upgrade again with the theme on. So I like to build the theme in Backdrop, like so that I know that the things that, you know, the CSS that used to stick to like IDs now gets updated to classes, and make sure it all kind of works before I do the upgrade. And then when I do the upgrade, I make sure that like all the blocks end up in the right place. And there's for sure a lot of stuff that doesn't get like finished in the first pass of the theme because you don't have the blocks in the right places on the right pages. But I just want to make sure the template files are there, the CSS is loading. Like, is it generally sort of what I want, so that when I do the upgrade, I have something that's real that I can theme. And then I'll do all the little itty bitty tying up loose ends after the update is done.
So I want to jump in and just speak up for people like me that are very inexperienced in upgrades, right? And when I went into my first upgrade, my sort of view was that I was really migrating content, and that in terms of the theme, I was going to be starting from scratch. Since then, I mean, I've only done new themes, so I didn't have to worry about this, but like, it didn't even occur to me that blocks would be part of my upgrade, right? I just assumed I would be sort of recreating those manually on the new site. And I guess I'm just throwing that out there in case anybody else is at that level. But it sounds to me like
there are a lot of different ways that are valid approaches. Most of my sites, as they've upgraded from 6 to Backdrop or 7 to Backdrop, have ended up with completely different themes in the end. And so in those cases, I wouldn't bother trying to upgrade the theme or keep the block placements the same, because you know, what might have been a 3-column layout in Drupal 6 is now a 1-column layout in Backdrop. There isn't any matching between where the blocks used to be and where they are now. So at that point, I just don't even think about it. But I have some Drupal 7 sites where people are like, I don't have a lot of money. I don't really want you to build a new theme. I just want to add some new features, and I don't want to build them on a dead platform. And so in that case, it's like, well, how much of what we have already can be reused? And so in those cases, it's like, let's keep it exactly the same and try and get that upgrade path to just put it all in the same place. And so if you have the same blocks, the same regions, the same theme, it makes sense to do that as part of the upgrade. But if you're going to have a different theme, different placements, and all your pages look different, there's no point in trying to retain what was there before.
It depends.
Yeah,
It
sorry.
depends. Sorry.
You go first, Ola.
Thanks. So I think it depends also of the amount of blocks. So if you have 10 blocks or not so many, it's easy to have a look at the old site.
Right.
This block is on that page and so on.
Yeah.
And so you don't have to do it during the upgrade. You can do it afterwards. And the theme, yeah, is another question. So it depends if it should look like the same or not, I think. But it's however work with the theme because you have to combine the layout and the theme, which wasn't the case before in Drupal.
Because I haven't done any actual upgrades so far, so it's in theory in my head. What happens to blocks, because they are part of sort of like, they're not part of the theme technically, but they are part of the upgrade of the whole theme and layout thing. Do we have one-on-one sort of like matching blocks? Are there any trouble when one does the upgrade?
So as long as the module that provides the block is there in Backdrop and it has the same settings, then when you move a block from like the left sidebar in Bartik to the left sidebar in Moscone flipped, what Backdrop actually does is it reads all of your block placement details out of the Drupal 7 database and creates a layout, not a layout template, a layout in the config file with reference to that block and its settings the way it was in Drupal 7. So it only creates one. So it's creating the default one. And if you have any like restrictions on the placement of those individual blocks, those all end up as configurations on the blocks in your default layout. And so the problems come up when like your module in Drupal 7 doesn't have the same block in Backdrop or doesn't have the same settings, or there's just some mismatch, like the data format change where it used to save like a node ID and now it saves a, I don't know, file object, or I don't know. If there's something like that that's different, it might be a problem. But most of the stuff from like core, it just works because we haven't changed it. If you have contrib modules like, I don't know, there's a bunch of them that I use like on the web or something that puts like social media icons, that's mostly the same, and so all the configurations will come across. And if they don't, hopefully the modules have provided upgrade paths, so it'll get from like block settings before to block settings after. And that's a little tricky when you're going from like a variable to configuration change, but yeah.
I'm guessing that because I didn't see any issues in the queue with regards to that, having mismatches doesn't happen that often, or it's not as important?
It really depends on the contrib modules. My guess is that you haven't seen very many issues in the queue because most people are upgrading more like Olaf, where you look at the blocks and you're like, oh, there's only 10. Why would I bother upgrading? I can just configure them. It'll be really fast.
Right.
Or they upgrade to a completely different theme where you don't need to worry about it. So upgrading, it doesn't. I think the number of people who are upgrading from exactly the same theme in Drupal 7 to the theme in Backdrop is minimal right now. I think we'll see more of that as we get closer to Drupal 7 end of life, where people are just trying to get off of 7. Where right now it's like, oh, I'm investing in my site, I'm doing something new, or I'm rebuilding something simple, where it doesn't make sense to invest a bunch of time in this more complicated upgrade path.
In D7, was Beans the go-to module for custom blocks? Was that how it worked? For custom content blocks, should I say?
I never used it.
What's the question?
As in, what was the sort of like go-to solution for custom content blocks in D7?
For nodes, like, entity blocks? Yeah, beans were popular.
Yeah, okay. Do we support that in core, like an upgrade path? Do they get picked up, or?
So we don't have content blocks in Backdrop core. We only have config blocks. So
Yes.
we don't have, you would need a bean module for backdrop
Okay.
if you want to have an entity block.
Okay.
Something that came up. So the layout, the layout file, is it fair to say that that's the equivalent of the page template in Drupal?
Yes.
Okay.
That's
So go
what
ahead. Okay. You have talked about, I think, moving your custom layout files into your theme. So I mean, I assumed that I would put my, in backdrop, we've separated the layouts from the theme in general and core. And so, I've considered that I would have a contrib theme, a contrib modules, and a contrib layouts folder. Sounds to me like that's certainly appropriate, but you can just put them into your theme if you want.
You can only put the template file overrides in your theme the same way you put template override files for Node or Block or anything else in your theme. But you can't have a layout info file or any of that in your theme. It has to be separate, because if you change your theme, the whole point is that you don't want your site to break. So if you had like that layout definition in there and you changed your theme, your site would break. So we didn't support that.
Sure.
I do often wonder in my head if like, maybe we should. But then I come back, I kind of go in a circle. I'm like, oh, that would be convenient. And like, no, that would break everything. That's how Drupal got there in the first place.
Yeah, this discussion came up again, in the recipes or the distributions. What do we do if a layout requires a module or a layout? Oh, sorry, what if a theme requires a module or a layout? And I need to still test this. Do we support dependencies on themes? Like, can we say that a theme depends on a module or?
I don't know.
I don't think it's a hard
I
dependency.
would be open to that though.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because then that would make sense, because the layout would be detected in the layouts folder. I mean, the custom one, theme, the one that you were asking for. It would be placed on the layout folder, and then the theme would be able to reference that as in a dependency. And the benefit of that
I'm not sure you want to do that though, because the whole point of having like your theme needs to support all the layouts. Like, and having it depend on a contrib solution would mean that it doesn't support anything in core, which would make the user interface like sort of broken.
Oh, okay.
Right? Where if you want to change to like a one column layout and that wasn't supported by your theme, then your site wouldn't work. So I think it needs to be like the layouts you add to your theme need to be additional. Like, oh, you want fancy extra stuff? Here's fancy extra stuff. You can add these fancy extra layouts, but it still needs to support the like 10 basic core ones. But I do think that having like themes depend on modules or modules depend on themes, I don't know. It's so messy, because then what happens if you turn off the module? Does your like
theme get disabled?
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, it needs a little bit of thought. Yeah, the only reason why I mentioned it is because it came up in the whole discussion about recipes and distributions. Yeah. And it seemed a good idea to have a dependency when it comes to the installer, as in it would automatically pick up that that specific theme also requires a module or whatever and download these automatically. But these could, I don't know, this is a totally different, it's slightly related, but totally different matter.
Yeah, I don't know. I can go either way. I see arguments for everything.
I see arguments as well.
Yeah. One argument would be that, for example, I think that the core layouts don't cover all use cases very well.
No, they don't.
For example, the typical paragraphs landing page where we have these stripe layout with a different color and full width. In the content, that's not supported at the time. You can try to achieve that with sort of hacking around, but it's not really supported. So, if you port a theme which looks like that, or like some of the typical Bootstrap themes, doesn't work very well now. So you have to recommend another layout, I think.
Yeah,
and
that's definitely messy, because the way Backdrop it wants you to build things is where the content goes inside the layout. But with something like paragraphs that has full width stripes, now the layout is inside the content, right? Where the paragraph is what's determining the layout. And so that, I don't know, I feel like I see the use case here for like paragraphs, including a layout, right? Where it's like, well, that paragraphs had that layout where it could offer this thing. But then again, if you use that layout on something that doesn't have paragraphs and you disable the paragraphs module because you think you're not using it, then that page is, it's very complicated. Everything is all.
Yeah. Does that touch the flexible templates that Doc Wilmot has created? The thing that where you can create columns within the regions, or
I still think that uses Bootstrap. I mean, I don't know. I haven't used it recently. The Bootstrap sets the like container width, right? And so if it's one area that has a container width on it, you couldn't get the all the way stripes. You'd have to have one that didn't have a container, and then put all of your stuff in it, and then each like row needs to have the container inside of it.
So when you say the always stripes, is it similar to the, like when we add the hero block that goes from end to end?
Yeah.
Okay.
So there is like a CSS hack that the hero block does that like forces it to be full width, but I don't think that works on anything old in IE. So we've got like a weird backfill in there. So it gets complicated if you wanted to like write your own CSS to do that. Okay. Where Bootstrap provides a way for you to do that, right? You just like don't have a container and then you put the content in and you put the container inside. Like it does that. So it's really easy to build a layout like that not using paragraphs, right? But then if you want paragraphs, because that's how you enter your content, it's got to be dynamic and like wrap. So you need to have a no column layout that has, or an area of your page where you put your paragraphs that doesn't have any containers, so that paragraphs can do that for you. Yeah, I haven't tried. I don't have any paragraph sites right now. All my sites are still using field collections. But I can see how this is a feature that everyone's going to want that we don't currently support.
Yeah, and paragraphs is widely used. And I think even like the field collection, I think one of these modules even recommends and says, suggests that they will sort of like deprecate it over paragraphs.
Yeah, yeah.
And now they're trying to do something in D8 core or D9, sorry. So yeah, I think we're heading that way.
Yeah.
These bags are different. So I guess that to sum up the conclusion of that discussion is that this is one case where you would definitely need a custom layout, right? And then related to that, I would also like to ask, did anyone try to do any, what do you call it? See, this word slips in my head all the time. What is that? It's a single page site, and then it uses like different regions, horizontal regions that overlap. Sorry? Parallax, yeah. So in cases where one wants to sort of like port a site that uses a parallax thing, would they have to build a custom parallax enabled sort of layout, or would it be done on the theme level? Have you had any experience, any of you, with such a site?
No.
I have built a couple of parallax sites in Backdrop, and I always do it in the theme. The reason I do it in the theme is because my parallax background images usually also have to go in the theme. So I feel like when I'm tying the like CSS and the JavaScript and the imagery together, that's a very theme specific thing. But I could see a use case for having like a user interface for adding those images or videos or whatever's in the background and letting it be customizable. But for the sites that I've built, I haven't contributed those themes. One of them was a theme forest theme that for licensing reasons I couldn't contribute. Mm-hmm. And the other one was just super custom, and the person who has the site is never gonna change that. So
actually, could I sort of on a beginner theming track, as the user group, you just mentioned theme forest, Jen, and I think like one of my questions has been why there are so few themes for Backdrop, and I think one of the ways that you've gotten around that in the past has been to use like theme forest themes or WordPress themes, right, and modifying them for Backdrop.
Yeah.
You want to say something quickly about how you do that?
Yeah. So if somebody asked me recently to make a video on how to do it, and I have been I got a new version of the theme that runs my own site that I thought would be a good one to do that for. But essentially what I do is I go to ThemeForest and I have my clients, or maybe I'll do it, search for just HTML templates, because they have basically an HTML copy of every theme that they have is also available in straight HTML. So you can take something that was made for WordPress or made for Drupal, you can get this flat HTML version of it. And I find that's pretty easy to adapt into a Drupal theme or a backdrop theme, where you can just take the, like, okay, here's the body tag, here's the class that need to go into it, I'm going to add the classes into mine, here's the JavaScript files or CSS that needs to be added, I'm going to add those in my themes info file, here's the layout, I'm going to copy that part of the page and put it into a layout, and you just replace everything that's got example content in it with whatever variable, like print the region or print the site name or whatever it is, and you can kind of piece it together pretty fast. I have a couple sites that are super complicated that were really valuable to start with, these HTML themes, because you can get a really, really complicated, robust theme for like $35 that has 100 different displays of like widgets and views and all of these different things that you can, little meters that show levels of, was it 9 out of 10 or 4 out of 10 or whatever, and they're like dynamic and interactive, and they have animations in a way that, like, if I had to hire a designer to build all of that stuff, it would be hundreds, if not thousands of dollars. And because you have all of the finished HTML, you also have like a working copy you can reference and look at and be like, what is this supposed to do when I click on it? And is my backdrop site doing the same thing when I click on that? So it is fairly time consuming if you're building in all the little widgets. So I've got one site that took a really long time to get the theme converted because it's got all of the little widgets. And I have my site that took me like 2 hours. I took none of that. I'm like, I just want the parallax thing. And then I put it in. And so, yeah, I think it would be really good to have a video version of this is how I copy this. I'm really bad at editing video, so probably what you would get would be like 4 hours of me being like, why isn't this working? Hold on, I'm going to pause for a minute. But yeah, I don't know. I think that would be really, really fun to do that. But yeah, I like to start with the finished version. In a perfect world, what I would like to do is go back to the person who made the theme and go, hey, we'd like to release this as a backdrop theme. Could you put it on ThemeForest as a backdrop version? But right now, there is no way that you can just say, like, add a new CMS and then plunk in a new version of something. They only support, 3 or whatever, Drupal, WordPress, and static HTML. And I don't know how to get that changed on their end until enough of their theme developers are like, we really want to sell this for backdrop. And then they'll be like, oh, what is this backdrop thing? Maybe we should add it.
The reason why I was bringing up these questions is independently of what designers all over the world think of parallax and single site website, the single page websites, they seem to be a trend. Like, there's many of them, so it's likely that we're going to have a lot of people porting it. And the basic reason why I was asking that is that if things need to be done on a layout level to support full width, multiple regions, and also parallax versions of it, maybe we should discuss adding 2 sets layouts in like core that support that out of the box. That's the main reason why I was asking it. But if you say that this can be easily done on a theme level, then yeah.
Yeah, it definitely can be supported on a theme level, but it requires some custom work where I feel like, though custom stuff is what's going to make backdrop look amazing in the long run, not having anything at all makes it look not good in the short run. And so I'd love to find more ways to sort of facilitate doing better looking out of the box stuff, or at least click together stuff in ways that people don't need to make those kind of investments initially.
So one of the sites that I thought was a parallax was Masterseed Media, but that seems to be a single page layout with multiple horizontal regions.
Yeah.
Bringing that into my head, and then D8's layout builder and the flexible templates that Doc Goldman is getting ready for us, I thought that if we could provide a way to people that have such sites to arbitrarily, add another row and then add another row and be able to specify background images or colors for these, then it would make it so easy for them. And I think it's quite a popular sort of like design that justifies the 80% use sort of thing. And long term, it would also help people that build contrib themes. So yeah, but it's good, yeah, to discuss if anyone has done it and how they've done it. It's good.
So one of my assumptions about the lack of activity in the theme area is that most of the people using Backdrop right now are Drupal 7 developers that have moved over and that have grown to like making their own themes anyway. So they've been using a base theme. And I think a couple of us has mentioned that we're like just creating sub themes for basis, and that seems to be working pretty smoothly for us. And so, you know, for us, like having a lot of more, you know, other than, you know, my own wish for like color module support or having some built-in SAS, you know, which I can do, I can add myself pretty quickly. Things are working fine. But I think what we've been talking about recently is that if we want to bring new people in that aren't Drupal developers, that lack of sort of contrib themes, you know, might be an obstacle. And I've heard that from people already who've been to the site, and like one of the first things they notice is there's hardly any themes.
Yeah.
Yeah, we all agree on that, but the thing is that
Right.
you need to take into account that the fact that we have separated the layouts and the theme thing, and the theme now is more of a CSS job. It's much less work, and this is actually one big reason why there's not many themes. Because if it's just a skin and a CSS, people like Ola, for example, can use basis, and most of the sort of like functionality is provided by core. So there's, I think that it's called achieved to like, so it's not going to be, my point is that it's not going to be a bad thing. It's not a bad thing. It would be a good thing to have more themes, because it would sort of like lure the people that think that this is a thing, if they come from WordPress or what have you, so they don't say, oh, that you have no themes.
Yeah.
But yeah, and one thing that came up recently with regards to that is that some themes in V7 land were shipping their own sort of like, what you call it, slideshow libraries. But if the Views slideshow, whichever slideshow we have in place is, what you call it, is usable enough and it's easy to install it, then I see no point why a theme would lock you in. So all the themes in D7 that I've sort of like used just to test things out, they all seem to have settings and tweaks about things that do not make sense in Backdrop, because we have such a flexible layout builder. And I think that this will be also the case with D8 now in the layout builder. But yeah, that's my take, but that's my understanding.
But I think we all for out of the box experience, and so we can't expect from people to write their CSS to have a decent theme.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think all people want to use basis like it is. So it would be nice to have, even in core, I think, every year one new shiny theme.
We don't have to have these in core, and the reason why we don't have to do it is because we have the project installer. With D7, it was much harder to copy your theme to your server and then enable it. With the project installer, you can browse for themes and install them like without leaving the user interface. So we have lowered the barrier for that as well, and it's easier for people. And when it comes to changing the colors, now with better color support, if things like implement that, then people will have even less sort of like reasons to ask for a custom theme. I mean, our target audience are really small sites. We don't say that we don't support the bigger sites, but the bigger sites will most likely have a dedicated developer or a team or a partner that they work with, which will build the theme for them. Having said all that, I'm not saying that we shouldn't support more themes. We should, and we should try to port the most popular ones from a partner that they work with, which will build the theme for them.
Which are quite ugly.
Having said all that, I'm not saying that we shouldn't support more themes. We should, and we should try to port the most popular ones. I hear myself being repeated that they work with, which will build the theme for them. I'll log out and I'll join again. Having said all that, I'm not saying that we shouldn't support more themes. We should, and we should try to port the most popular. I hear myself being repeated that they work with, which will build the theme for them. I'll log out and I'll join again. Having said all that, I'm not saying that we shouldn't support more themes. We should.
Was that my fault?
That was weird.
It
was interesting.
it might have been my fault.
Did it stop? Did it stop after I logged out?
Yes.
Okay.
We had overlapping Gregory's, didn't we?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I went to peek at the the YouTube channel, and I think that maybe would cause that loop. I don't know. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah, it could have been that. But yeah, my point is that yes, we should make sure that we have more themes and especially port the most popular ones. But it's a good thing that people have not having a lot of themes. It's a side effect of both we don't have time for it, but also people don't need it because things are so much easier now.
But one side thing, I don't think we should port the most popular ones, at least for the use case having shiny themes, because the most popular Drupal themes are not very shiny. So there was recently the list of, I don't know his name, made a list aside with a lot of Drupal themes to switch. And they were so ugly. So really, let's port them maybe for the sake of upgrade path. That would be interesting. But to have shiny themes, don't take these themes. They're so ugly, really.
Yes.
That's
yes,
not.
maybe that's
new themes.
maybe that's
Better
why
ones.
people have not bothered to port them, because they are so ugly. And as you said, it's not just a matter of having porting equivalents. It's the marketing aspect of it, because when we say to people, we ported most of the modules, we do it so that we sort of reassure that them that there is an upgrade path. And if people are tied to their or locked into their theme, they would expect the equivalent to be present with as less work as it should. Yeah, that's a valid reason.
Okay. We just lost Jeff. Any other? We got about 5 minutes left. Anybody have any other questions or things they want to share about theming or their experiences?
I have a related question. So
Sure.
I was also asking it in Gitter without an answer, because I'm interested in an off-canvas menu, and we have in core the smart menu for the drop-down. And I think a lot of themes today use also off-canvas menus, and maybe we should consider to recommend or even to support such a menu in core.
Help me out. What's off-canvas menu?
That's the one which slides in and out instead of going down. Yeah.
As in maybe a contrib module that sort of like provides that functionality for menus. Like you point it to a menu and then it creates a sliding menu from one side of the site.
Yeah, I think it doesn't exist so far.
I think there were a few contrib modules that would used to do that in D7, weren't they?
In D7, you said. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I will have a look.
We can have a look, yeah.
Yeah, and if those modules worked out, yeah. Jen, another thing, you're muted first of all, but have you had many sites that used mega menus, and what did you do about it? Like, was it a custom solution?
So in Drupal 7, a lot of my sites used mega menus, but I ended up moving away from using modules for all of them because it really seemed to slow down the menu rendering system. And so in Backdrop, actually, I'm not even sure if any of my Backdrop sites have them, maybe one. What I end up doing is rendering like the top level links completely separately, like not part of the menu system. And then every subsection, I'll like render a submenu into it. So rather than rendering like render the menu and having it build me a mega menu, I'll be like print a block, print a something else, print a whatever, print a whatever. And then when you click on it, it'll open up and then the rendered menus are like inside. So I sort of do my menus differently so they don't have to actually, it looks like a mega menu and it works like a menu, but you don't build it like a menu. You just assemble blocks. So that's the kind of thing where I think long-term in Backdrop, if we can get the like mini layouts thing going, the mini layout could be like, what do you want in your mega menu, right? And you could put in the blocks and the menus and whatever, and then there could be some like fancy Japanese thingy that could make it do the opening closey bit. But,
just a thought. You know how I try to keep up with different libraries that we added in different versions? Smart Menus has had 2 small releases, so they don't offer any significant changes, but yeah, we can update them. But I just visited the page and they provide full width mega menus.
yeah.
So
I
if
have
they,
used the Smart Menus mega menu feature on a Drupal 7 site, and it isn't as complete as you think. It gives you a class that adds some style, and so we could add that same class in the Backdrop, and it would give us the same thing. But it doesn't provide like the content in a way that you would think. It was just like, oh, do you want your thing to be wider? Like add this class. So I think we could definitely update the Smart Menus library in Backdrop to give people that same power. But I would love it if whatever solution we came up also integrated with the CMS part where you could like place blocks in there. And that bit would require some thinking.
there was a module called TB something, something. It had 2 initials and then menus, something like that, mega menus in D7 that offered this functionality, sort of like a visual mega menu builder. If we could provide something like that based on the layout builder, that would be a, kick-ass feature that we say for 2.0 or for whatever version. But having said that, as I said, the 2 versions that I mentioned, that came out, the new releases for Smart Menus are not adding this feature. This feature already seems to be there with the version that we shipped with core. It's just I'm mentioning that because we should update that. Like we don't have an ongoing issue like the rest of them, like the jQuery ones and the CK editor. But yeah, since we ship a core with a library that supports that out of the box, why not use it if possible? That's my point.
Yeah.
So sorry, I forgot myself. Like, got carried away with the Smart Menus reference. But what did you say? Did you end up doing custom solutions after all for the sites?
Yeah. So for one of them, I used that mega menu class. So I think it was Drupal 7. So I used the mega menu class, and I just rendered other stuff in a theme function where it was just like, while you're theming the menu, when you get to menu item 46, put in a block or something like that. And then one of my sites, I just built the top level menu rather than theming a menu. I just built all of the links individually, and then within each link, I rendered sub menu items. So rather than having like top level menu, it was like about menu, history menu, whatever menu. And so each one of those rendered using the regular menu system, but the top level didn't. And that meant that I didn't get the menu toggler responsive stuff the way I wanted it. So I had to add all that in manually. So that was a big pain. I wouldn't recommend doing that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I haven't had a lot of mega menus in Backdrop.
I think that when it was the time we were so excited, was it 1.2 that introduced that feature? We were so excited to get that feature out, but even if we saw that there was support for mega menus, we wouldn't want to delay it. So we got it out of the way, and then we were happy with it, and we never bothered to see what other features are there.
Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah.
So this support for mega menus, could you provide a link in GitHub?
Oh yes, sure.
Yeah, thanks.
So I just on Gitter I have the sort of, that's the main site, and it has the demo gallery, and there's one of these examples that says full width mega menus.
Okay, thanks.
We've been about an hour. I think we should wrap up the official meeting.
Good session.
Thank everybody for coming. Let's do this again soon. Yep. The Backdrop mini camp is coming up in 3 weeks.
Got a couple of emails from people that said they just discovered Backdrop and they're coming to Minneapolis now.
Okay, really?
So that's exciting. They're like, oh, Backdrop's a thing? Oh, there's a camp. Okay, I'll go. I'm like, what? People are just showing up. It's great.
maybe let me know so I can watch out for them and make sure they get registered properly.
Okay.
Okay, great. I'm going to end the broadcast. I'll be hanging around for a few minutes afterwards if anybody else wants to.
Yeah, I would like at least you and Jen to hang around.
Okay.
Okay.